So today we're going to wrap up talking about circles, and we are going to write the equation, the standard form of a circle. And what you guys are going to see today is today they are going to give us the center. So they're going to give us h and k, but they are not going to give us the radius. And we are going to have to do an extra step to get the radius, figure out the radius ourselves. So they're going to give us the center, and instead of the radius, they're going to give us another point on your circle. So just so you can visualize this, what's going to happen, and they're not going to give you a graph. They're not going to give us a graph, but just so you can see. They're going to say, hey, I have a circle. The center is right here. Okay, and then again, they're not going to draw us a picture, but I'm just drawing one so you can see it. So they'll give us this point right here. They'll give us h and k. And then they're going to give you some point somewhere out here on the actual circle itself. Okay. And they're going to ask us, hey, what's the equation of this circle? Well, you guys know standard form, x minus whatever your h is, y minus whatever your k is, and equal to your radius squared. The problem is we don't know the radius. They're going to give us the h, they're going to give us the k, okay, but they're not going to give us r. They're not going to give us radius. Well, if you actually look at the picture that I just drew, your radius goes from the center to any point on your circle. So if I go from my center to the point that they give me, you should see that, hey, that's actually my radius. Okay, if I go from the center to the point that they give me on the circle, that makes my a radius. And so I need to know what this is. Okay, normally they've given it to us. Today they're not. So I need to know how long it is from my center to that blue point on my circle. And if anytime you're looking for how long something is, remember that's distance. And we actually have a formula for that. So again, they're not going to give us the picture. They're going to give us this point right here in red. They're going to give us the center. And then they're going to give us a point somewhere on the circle, which I just put it here in blue. And so we're going to have to do the distance formula from the center to the blue dot to figure out what to use for r. So we have to use the distance formula. Now, there is a shortcut on Desmos that we have shown you to do distance. That's not going to work here. We're going to have to use part of our formula. So to refresh our memory, remember the formula is the square root of, you take your x values, so I'm just going to say first x value minus second x value, and you square them. You add it to, and you subtract your y values. Now, a lot of this we can type into Desmos, so we're not going to have to do a lot of calculating, but okay, we're not going to be able to type it all in at once, and we're not going to be able to use the shortcut that we know for distance, because it's not going to work with what we're trying to do. So we're going to use that, this right here, once we get a number, after we plug in our pieces. When we use the distance formula, this will give you what you need for your radius, okay, because they're not giving it to us. They're adding that step. So once we get that number, we'll plug that in for r in our standard form, and we'll use the center that they gave us for our h and k. Excuse me. All right, so let's see that in action, okay, because it will make more sense once we see an example. Now, again, they're not going to give us the picture, okay? So if you look at number 1, it says, use the information provided to write the equation of each circle, okay? And then you see no picture. So they are giving us the center. Okay? They tell us the center is 12, negative 2. So I already know my h and my k. Okay, so I have 2 pieces of information. I need the third part. I need r. I don't know what r is. Okay. We're going to do the distance formula to find it, because notice in the next part, they say, okay, the point that's on the circle is 14, 0. So what you need to do is use the distance formula to figure out how far it is from our center to the point. And that will give us the number that we need for R. So a couple things. Okay, and you want to stay organized, take your time with this, don't kind of plow through it or rush through it. So my center is 12, -2. Okay, and my point on my circle is 14, 0. You may want to label these starting out. This is your first X value. And let's use a different color so I don't confuse somebody. Let's use green. This is my first X value. This is my first Y value. This is my second X value. This is my second Y value. That's what the subscripts mean. The 1 means first X, okay, and the 2 means second X. So our distance formula says, okay, subtract your X's and square them, and add that to subtract your Y's, square them, and then final step, take the square root. So what we're going to do is we're not going to do the square root part in Desmos just yet. We're going to go ahead and get the numbers into the right place. So I am going to put the square root. Okay, I will put the square root. We're just going to drop things in. So what's my first X value? My first X value is 12. So I'm going to say 12 minus, what's my second X value? 14. Okay, then I'm going to square it. I'm just dropping numbers in. Plus, what's my first Y value? My first Y value is -2. Minus, just following my formula, what's my second Y value? 0. And I want to square that. Now, when we go to type it into Desmos, I just want you guys to type in this part. Okay, don't type in the square root, okay, because you'll see why in a second. If you put the square root over it too, it's going to give you a decimal, and we don't want the decimal right now. So we're just going to type in that part right there. Okay, so everybody pull Desmos up, and this is going to be attention to detail. So again, you're not going to want to go super fast. The shortcut's not going to work here because we don't want it to give us a decimal. And if we do the shortcut, that's what Desmos is going to give us. So there's the first part of it. And then we're going to say -2 minus 0. Okay, so there's the second part. So it gives me 8. So all of that I wrote Desmos tells us all of this is 8. So we didn't do anything with the square root. We got to put it back, the square root of 8. Now, we can type that in because sometimes we might get lucky and it might be a perfect square. So square root of 8. All right, so does everybody see how we get the big long decimal? What did we say when you had a radius and you took the square root of it like that and you got a big long decimal? We said don't write the decimal, right? And that's why we can't do the shortcut on Desmos, because that's the answer that Desmos will give us. It wouldn't leave it as a square root. So we're going to leave it as the square root of 8. So let's make sure we understand what we just figured out. When we use the distance formula, okay, what I had in black, typed it in, got that number, typed in square root of 8, got a decimal. When we did that, we figured out how far it was from the center to the point. So remember, how far it is from the center to that point on your circle, that's actually your R. Okay, so now, do we have enough information to write our equation? Do we have enough information to write our equation of the circle? Okay, hopefully the answer you came up with was yes, because our center, they already gave us. We just did the distance to get our R. And so now we can write it. So we're not going to do number 2. So I'm just going to come over here because I write really big. So remember, standard form of our equation of a circle, x minus h squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals radius squared. And so now we're going to use what we have for h and k. Okay, we didn't have to figure that out. They told us. Okay, our h is 12 and our k is -2. Remember, we're just dropping it in there. But now we just figured out what our radius is. Our radius is the square root of 8. So we're going to say equals square root of 8. And remember, you do have to square that. Now clean up your equation like we have been. X minus 12 is good. Y minus -2. We don't want to leave it like that. That's going to become y plus 2. Okay. And we're going to use Desmos. Okay. Square root of 8 squared. Oh, look at that. Remember, a square undoes or cancels out the square root. So it comes out to be just 8. So that is the equation of our circle with center at 12, -2, and the point 14,0 is on the circle. All right, so let's do another one. Okay, and again, we didn't do 2, so just cross that out. We're going to do 3 because we have space and I write large. So again, let's pay attention to what they're giving us. So they're giving us a center. Okay, the center is 11, -17. Okay, so remember, they're starting you out with h and k. That's your h, that's your k. The point on our circle is 9, -17. Okay. So again, we do not know what the radius is right now. So we are going to do the distance formula. We want to know how far it is from the center to the point. So that's distance. So your distance formula, I'll scroll out a little so you can see it up there in black. And again, a lot of you are probably going to want to write your 2 points so you can label them. Because again, this is just taking your time, making sure you're not rushing. So this is my first x, this is my first y, this is my second x value, this is my second y value. Okay. And now we're going to put it into the distance formula. Again, the distance formula is up here in black. And so I'm going to say square root. First x is 11 minus, what's my second x? 9. So we square that. Plus, what's my first y? -17 minus, what's my second y value? -17 and squared. So remember, when you head over to Desmos, do not type in the square root. Just type in the parentheses and all of that. Don't put the square root in, okay? Because again, we don't want it to kick out a decimal, because then we won't know what's under our square root. So we're going to go to Desmos, type it in. So take that out, take that out. So we are going to do 11 minus 9 squared plus, don't forget your parentheses, -17 minus -17. We don't worry about that. Desmos will handle that double negative. Okay, and so we get 4. All right, so we get 4. Now don't forget, we still have the square root. Type that in, and what do we see? We see that square root of 4, when you type it in, actually is just 2. Okay, it's not a decimal. So our radius is 2. The reason we didn't do that on the first one is because, remember, we typed the square root of 8 in and got a decimal. Okay, don't want decimals. When you type in the square root of 4, you will get 2, just so everybody can see it happen. Okay, so we can just, you write 2. Radius is 2. All right, so now we have every piece we need. We have our h and our k up here. We have our r right here. So now we're going to drop it into our standard form. And so we're going to say x minus, what's my h? Again, we're going to skip 4 just for room's sake. My h is 11 squared plus, because now we're just dropping it into our standard form. Y minus, our k is negative 17 equals, what's my radius? We just figured out was 2, and remember, squared. Clean it up. X minus 11 is good to go. Y minus negative 17, we don't want to leave that, so we're going to write y plus, minus negative makes it a positive, and 2 squared is 4. The key to this is taking your time and not rushing through it. Okay, if you try to shortcut it, or, find a shortcut, or try to find a pattern, you're probably going to make a careless mistake somewhere, which is going to mess up your problem. All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video right here, and then try to work out the number 5, and then come back and check. So pause for a minute so you can pause. Go work out the problem, come back and see if you did it right. All right, so again, they're giving us the center, they're giving us the point on the circle. We do not know what R is, so we have to figure that out, and we figure that out by using the distance. How far is it from the center to the point on the circle? So we have our 2 points, 10, 3, 12, 10. Again, right now, you probably want to label first X, first Y, second X, second Y, before you start trying to plug into your distance formula. All right, so we're going to say first X minus second X squared plus first Y minus second Y squared. Now, we're going to go to Desmos, and we're going to type in just the parentheses part. Okay, we're not going to put in the square root. And yes, I know I could split screen, but it makes it too small for me. You guys know that. So 10 minus 12 squared plus, because thank goodness we don't have to actually do this math, minus 10 squared. Okay, gives me 53. So I come back over here and say, okay, when I type that in, I get 53. I have not done anything with the square root, so I have to make sure that I bring that along. Now, let's type that in and see if we get a decimal, or if 53 is a perfect square and will give me a whole number. Okay, oh, it's a decimal. We don't fool with the decimals, right? So, my radius is the square root of 53. Okay, so now I've got to use my h and my k from my center and what I just figured out for my radius, and I have to put it into my standard form. And so, okay, even though we don't make you, but at this point you've probably memorized, x minus, what's my h? Come back over here and look at your center, 10 squared, plus y minus, what's my k? 3 squared, equals my radius, which came out to be a decimal, so I'm leaving it as a square root, squared. So I scan, no rewrites, we're good to go. So my final answer, x minus 10 squared plus y minus 3 squared. Now, we got to type in the square root of 53 squared, and if you pop back over here, you can actually, if you still have it on your Desmos, just square it. And remember, the square undoes the square root. Okay. So our radius squared, our final answer is just the 53. So take your time with this. Okay, if you take your time, label your x and your y's, okay, and use Desmos. This is not too bad. The only step that we're adding is this step where you have to calculate the distance, okay, to get your r. Okay, everything else is the same that we've been doing. All right, there are a couple questions on the back, so just to refresh your memory real quick, this is what we worked on yesterday, but let's just make sure, because we don't want you to lose this skill either. They want you to write the equation, so you need to write down what your center is. They don't really have a place for it, but you can write C for center if you would like. So you need your center. Okay, you also need to count. Remember, if they actually are kind enough to give us the picture, then we can count. So center. Now, if you're not sure if it's the center, what you can do is count left, right, up, and down and make sure that you're the same distance from the circle in all directions. So what I mean by that is, okay, and watch how they're marking these. Okay, you don't want to count this as 1. That's not 1. Okay, that's half, even though it's a line. So be careful of that. So from here to here is 1 unit, 2 units. Okay, 1 unit, 2 units, 1, 2, 1, 2. So you know that you found the center. Because some people were like, oh, how do I know if I'm in the center? If it's the same distance left, right, up, and down from the center to your circle, then you found the center. So we counted 2, right? Remember, when you do that, that's your radius. And our center would be, let's see, we'd have to go left 2 and down 3. Okay, so use that to drop into your standard form. Okay, so again, this is not new, so that's why I'm going through it quick. It's what we did yesterday. Clean it up. X plus 2 squared plus y plus 3 squared, and 2 squared is 4. Okay, let's just do one more, because you guys did a really good job with this yesterday. So, all right, let's do number 9. So let's find our center. Okay, again, if you're not sure if that's the center, okay, if you're not a visual person, then again, count. Just pay attention on this one, because this line is not a whole unit. See, it's 3 and then 4. That's half. So to count a whole unit, you have to go from 3 to 4. So that's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So I know I got my center because it's the same distance in all 4 directions. Okay, so we're going to write what our center is. So our center is, let's see, we have to go right 3. So everybody make sure you 1, 2, you had to go right 3, so that's positive. Then we had to go down 1, so that's negative. So there's my center. Oops. I was just trying to erase the counting that I did. All right, now count your radius. You can go up, down, left, or right from your center, whatever makes you happy. 1, 2. So this one, our radius is 2 again. Just coincidence, by the way. Drop it into your standard form. X minus h, all of that squared. Y minus k, that squared. And my radius squared. X minus 3 is good. Y minus -1, we don't leave it like that. Minus negative becomes plus a positive. And 2 squared, 4. Excuse me. So if you have any questions on the front when you get your practice, just make sure you talk to Ms. Witcher or myself. We'll be glad to walk you through it. Take your time. Do not rush. Label your parts, and you will be fine. But again, let us know if we can help you with anything. Thanks.